If the economy is so strong, why does it feel like life is still getting harder? That's not a rhetorical question. It's the core contradiction shaping America right now. You can have rising markets, upbeat headlines, and politicians promising a new boom. And at the exact same time, you can have millions of families feeling thinner, more exposed, and more anxious than they were a few years ago. Because most people don't live inside the stock market. They live inside monthly payments. They live inside the gap between their paycheck and the cost of staying normal. And that gap is what the strong economy story often refuses to look at. In the clip we're reacting to, the message is simple and powerful. The panel argues that affordability is solved by growth. Cut taxes, cut regulations, expand energy production, let the market run. If you do that, wages rise, inflation falls, interest rates come down, and the average American finally breathes again. It's clean, it's optimistic, it's also incomplete. Not because growth doesn't matter, it absolutely does, but because affordability is not one single dial you can turn. Affordability is a stack of realities that hit Americans at the same time. And if you only talk about one layer, you can make the economy look strong while people still feel weak. Here's the first layer most Americans feel before they feel anything else. They don't experience inflation as a number on TV. They experience it as a price level. Inflation is the speed. Price level is the new floor you're standing on. When inflation slows down, prices aren't magically going back down. They're just rising more slowly from a higher base. And that matters because households don't reset their lives every month based on the newest inflation print. They renew leases, they pay insurance, they buy groceries, they fill prescriptions, they pay utilities, they handle repairs, they handle school costs, they handle childcare. Those are not headline categories, those are life categories. So when someone says, growth will solve affordability, what they often mean is, the economy will get busy enough that people will feel better. But feeling better is not the same as paying less. And that's why you can hear disinflation and still feel like your money is shrinking. Because in real life, affordability doesn't improve when prices stop accelerating. It improves when your costs stop cornering your budget. And right now, for many Americans, the costs that corner them are not the ones politicians talk about most. The second layer is the one that turns a strong economy into a weak life almost overnight. Credit. America runs on credit. Not in theory, in practice. Mortgage, auto loans, credit cards, student debt, buy now, pay later, small business credit, home equity lines. The cost of money touches almost everything. And this is where TV conversation usually gets emotional, because it's easy to pick a villain. They blame the Fed. They blame Jay Powell. They say high rates created an affordability crisis. And yes, higher interest rates do hit household budgets. But here's the part that gets missed because it doesn't fit a neat slogan. Interest rates don't come down just because a panel says growth. Rates come down when lenders believe inflation will stay contained and the long-term picture is stable enough to accept lower returns. That's why the bond market matters more than any press conference. And that's why there's a hidden contradiction inside some pro-growth messaging. If your growth plan is also a plan for larger deficits, bigger debt, and louder fiscal uncertainty, you can end up with an outcome that looks like this. The economy gets a sugar rush, but the cost of borrowing stays stubbornly high. And if the cost of borrowing stays high, everyday Americans don't feel relief because their lives are financed. Think about how brutal that is. You can announce growth, you can announce a boom, you can declare victory, and a family still goes to get a mortgage quote and hears a number that turns the dream into a joke. Or they get an auto loan offer and realize the monthly payment is eating the same space as rent. Or they're carrying a credit card balance at a rate that feels like punishment. So the strong economy story can be true in the aggregate, while the household economy is still trapped. And this leads to the third layer, the one that explains the emotional gap. Even if growth happens, the question is not, does the economy grow? The real question is, what kind of growth, and who does it reach first? Because America has learned to produce a kind of strength that shows up fast in asset prices. Stocks can rise quickly, profits can surge quickly, headlines can turn optimistic quickly. But the lived strength households need is slower and more fragile. Households need stability, predictability, protection against shocks, lower risk. And when those are missing, people feel weak even when the economy is technically growing. Here's a simple way to put it. There's a difference between a strong economy and a strong society. A strong economy can mean the numbers look good. A strong society means normal people feel safe enough to plan. Because the feeling of weakness isn't just about income, it's about exposure. It's about the fear that one bad month can undo everything. One layoff, one illness, one rent renewal, one insurance premium jump, one car repair, one dental bill, one emergency. That's what people are carrying. And when you carry that, you don't care as much about the GDP number as you care about whether your life is breakable. Now, this is where the policy conversation gets interesting, because the clip also talked about messaging. They mentioned things like no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Politically, that's a smart move. It's designed to speak directly to working people who feel squeezed. It says, "We see you, and we'll let you keep more of what you earn." But the reality most people discover later is this. These policies are not a universal affordability reset. They are targeted, they are limited, they are conditional. And most importantly, even when they help on one side of the equation, the income side. But affordability is always a battle between income and costs. If your take-home pay rises a bit, but your rent renews higher, your insurance climbs, your childcare costs don't budge, and your borrowing costs stay elevated, you don't feel richer. You feel like you're running faster to stay in the same place. This is the trap Americans are in right now, and it's why you can have a political story that sounds uplifting while the lived reality stays heavy. Now let's talk about the part that is discussed the least because it's uncomfortable. Risk shifting. A lot of modern economic policy is not just about giving or taking money, it's about deciding who carries risk. When a society invests in a stronger floor, households carry less risk. They can recover faster. They can plan. When that floor weakens, households privately absorb shocks. That becomes a hidden tax. Not a tax you see on a paycheck, a tax you feel in anxiety, in caution, and in delayed life decisions. That's why people feel weaker. They feel like they're one step away from falling. And they feel that even if they're working, even if wages are rising nominally, even if the economy is growing, because growth that increases exposure doesn't feel like strength. It feels like tension. Now, I want to be fair. The clip is not wrong about everything. Energy prices matter. Lower energy costs can reduce pressure across the economy. Transportation, supply chains, production, the whole system is sensitive to energy inputs. And it's also true that productivity improvements, technology gains, and real growth can raise incomes over time. But this is where the narrative becomes dangerous, because it takes something that is partly true and turns it into a total explanation. Growth solves affordability. That sentence is powerful. It's also incomplete, because growth can raise incomes while costs rise faster. Growth can lift markets while households pay more to borrow. Growth can expand profits while rent stays sticky. Growth can look strong while the median household stays fragile. So if you want to understand why Americans feel weaker in a strong economy, you have to stop thinking in slogans and start thinking in mechanisms. Here's the mechanism. Modern America produces strength through financial channels first. That makes the economy look strong quickly, but it delivers relief to households last. And sometimes it never reaches them in the form they actually need, which is not a better headline. It's a better monthly reality. Now layer that on top of politics. Because this isn't just economics. This is the reason the country feels like it's arguing about two different realities at once. One side points at numbers and says, "Look, we're winning." The other side points at life and says, "I don't feel it." And both can be telling the truth. That's the modern American paradox. A top-line economy can be strong while the bottom-line life is weak. And if you want to predict where politics goes next, watch that gap. Because the larger that gap becomes, the more the country becomes vulnerable to extreme narratives. People don't radicalize because they hate charts. They radicalize because their lived reality doesn't match the story they're being told. And when that happens, they stop trusting institutions. They stop trusting experts. They stop trusting the media. They stop trusting the idea that the system is working for them. That's why affordability is not just a kitchen table issue. It's a legitimacy issue. It's the question of whether people believe the country's power is still connected to everyday consequences. So what should viewers take away from this? If someone promises you affordability through growth, ask these questions. What costs will actually go down, not just rise more slowly? What happens to borrowing costs? What happens to rent and insurance? What happens to the risk households carry? And who gets the first benefits of growth? Because if the answer is asset owners get it first and households get it later, then you're not describing a stronger America for most people. You're describing a stronger headline and a weaker life. That's the axis. That's the real story. And that's why this debate will define 2026. Not because Americans hate growth, because Americans want a version of growth that doesn't leave them feeling breakable. They want strength they can feel in their monthly budget. They want stability they can trust. They want a life that doesn't depend on one crisis not happening. So here's the question that matters. If Washington could only choose one for 2026, what should come first? Lower long-term interest rates? Lower essential costs like rent and insurance? Or higher take-home pay? And be honest, which one do you think the people in power are actually optimizing for?